This is a 160 Q&A practice test. Plaintiff attorney, Mr. Hess, capital H-E-S-S. Defense attorney, Mr. Wills, capital W-I-L-L-S. And we'll start with the court. Ready? Here we go. All right, you may continue, counsel. Let me try one more time. Did you see Bob Ryan place the underwear on the dartboard? Yes or no? I don't remember if it was him. Do you remember talking about this topic with Detective Byers last summer? Yes, I remember talking with her. In fact, you had a couple interview dates, one on 5/30/2006 and another one in July, right? I don't believe so. Do you remember when the second interview date was? Last time I saw her was on June 4th, 2006, June 2nd or the 4th. If I remember correctly, you gave testimony today that the officer in April of 2006 who took you into the bathroom told you something similar to you'd be arrested for a violation of probation. Is that about what you said? If not, you can please correct me. As I had stated, I was proactive with the question, would I be arrested? Would I be arrested? And I was told, yes, I would be. And that was by the officer who talked to you in the bathroom, is that right? And by the sergeant, okay, and by the one question at a time. So the officer in the bathroom told you that, right? Is that right? Yes. Were you in the bathroom, just the two of you? I was standing in the bathroom doorway. They asked me about the syringes in the bathroom. I was right there and they were in the bedroom, but yeah, right there. They said I would be arrested. All right, could you tell if anybody heard his comments to you? There was people, I'm sure they did. Did you see anybody react to his comments to you? I don't understand the question. I'll withdraw the question. So the officer in the bathroom tells you that you might be arrested or be in violation of probation, correct? They said I would be arrested. Okay, and also a sergeant told you that, right? Yes. And then Officer Lux, right? Yes. And again, you remember being interviewed last summer by Detective Byers, correct? Yes. And also by Detective Langer. Do you remember another detective named Langer? And you may not. I don't remember. I remember being interviewed, but I don't remember exactly their name. Okay. Would you agree that during those interviews you never made any mention whatsoever about this officer in the bathroom threatening to arrest you for violation of probation, right? I don't know if I made reference to it back then. Well, you were interviewed at some length, right? I was interviewed on more than one occasion, yes. And were you told to be honest during those interviews? I was honest. And those interviews were very detailed, right? Yeah, it was my recollection of the events, yes. In fact, the detectives went over the facts and what occurred over and over again, right? Would that be fair to say? Okay, yes, we went over it probably 3 different occasions. I met with them. In fact, you never mentioned in any of those interviews this officer in the bathroom threatening to arrest you for probation, did you? I don't know. And do you remember ever, during those interviews, ever mentioning anything about the sergeant telling you you might be arrested? I think there was. It was more I was asking. They weren't telling me, I was asking, and I think I would have mentioned that in my interview. That was my main concern. Thank you. During your most recent interview with Detective Byers and Mr. Hess, the last couple weeks, that's when it was brought to your attention that the officer in the bathroom mentioned something about your being arrested, correct? In fact, they told you that's what he said. I don't think so. I mean, I remember that. I remember the sergeant. So at some point I must have. I don't remember my exact interview. I don't. but I went over the night's events, and I remember asking several different people if I was going to be arrested. And you remember giving testimony today about a female officer working with Officer Ryan, correct? Yes. And what was the highlight of your interview with Detective Byers last year is you talked exclusively about this female officer threatening to arrest you, right? No. Do you remember telling Detective Byers that Officer Lux says, you asked Officer Lux, am I going to be arrested? And she says, yeah, we're taking you in, and then kept saying, and that's where it stopped, we're taking you in. Do you remember telling Detective Byers that regarding the female officer working with Officer Ryan? Yes. And do you remember telling Detective Byers, the girl said, referring to Officer Ryan's assistant, yeah, you're going to jail. Do you remember telling her that? Yes. And you gave some testimony today about an inquiry as to whether or not you were shooting up on April 2006. Do you remember that testimony? Yes. And do you remember talking to Detective Byers about inquiries made of you and whether or not you were shooting up? Yes. And you remember telling Detective Byers that I don't shoot up? I don't, yes. Now moving forward, on April 2006, prior to the departure of all officers, did you say Officer Ryan made a parting comment to you? He made several comments that night. I don't know which one you're referring to. That he'd be back? Yes. And exactly what did he say? He would be back to leave my mid-mornings open. And then eventually Officer Ryan did return, yes. And then your testimony today is when he arrived, you said that he told his assistant that he went out for coffee and needed to make this quick. Is that accurate? Something to that, yes. That's close, I'm sure, yes. And would you agree that is in your prior interviews, you made no reference ever to stating we need to make this quick? I'm not sure. So was it your impression that when Robert Ryan left on the morning of April 18th, was it your impression that he was going to be back that day? No. I didn't think he would be back that day. No, I wasn't. I don't know. I knew he'd be back. I didn't know what day. Now I apologize, but I want to ask some follow-up questions about when he came back. Sure. You denied being an intravenous drug user. True. Objection. Asked and answered. Overruled. Yes. Did you ever admit that you were high at that time? Yes. All right. The word list. Robert Ryan, capital R-O-B-E-R-T. New word, capital R-Y-A-N. Bob Ryan, capital B-O-B. Ryan, capital R-Y-A-N. Detective Byers, capital D on detective. Byers, capital B-Y-E-R-S. Officer Lux, capital O on officer. Lux, capital L-U-C-K-S. Detective Langer, capital D on detective. Langer, capital L-A-N-G-E-R. And that is it for the word list, and that will conclude our 160 Q&A practice test.